Hi guys, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Nuggets News. Another very interesting week in crypto, plenty to get through. So let's dive into our new segment on this day in history. So this time last year, Bitcoin just recovered to around 3,500 after that big pullback during the hard fork debacle. It's been a year since Bitcoin Cash has been around now. Vitalik and Joseph Poon unveiled their plans for Plasma, one of the scaling solutions on top of Ethereum. Now, Neo had just completed rebranding from AntShares, and some of you might not be aware of this if you've only been in for less than 12 months. So they upgraded to Neo there. And in 2011, on this day, 7 years ago now, this article by Adrian Covert, Bitcoin is dead. And the last paragraph here, we'll remember the good times, so on and so forth, but frankly, it's time for you to go. And people were calling Bitcoin dead because it had fallen from $35. It was a bubble and it had fallen down to $7. So, it's not the first time. I think it's a great website that actually showcases the number of times Bitcoin's been called dead. Now, while we're going through the past, I wanted to really talk about a big article this week. So, one by one, fiat currencies are losing value, if not becoming worthless through hyperinflation. So Turkish citizens, I tweeted, will seek gold or Bitcoin to protect their wealth from that of governments and central banks printing money. Now, this isn't the first time this has happened. We've been speaking about Venezuela a lot recently, Iran. But in the past, this really kicked off a huge rally in Bitcoin. Now, Turkey leading Europe cryptocurrency ownership in terms of volumes and exchanges and local Bitcoins in Turkey. Now, these citizens are aware of Bitcoin. It's an option now that didn't exist a few years ago. More and more countries are wising up to this. But back in 2013, when Cyprus had the bail-ins, now a lot of you might not be aware of this, they announced a haircut where people were going to take 6.7% of their money would be confiscated if you had under $100,000 in the bank, and 9.9% if you had over $100,000 in the bank. So the government just says, look, we don't have enough money, we've run up too much debt, that's ours. It's called a haircut, it's called a bail-in, pick whatever fancy name you want, but they stole citizens' money to cover their debts, okay? So this was huge at the time, and I just want to show you it on the charts. So in 2012, Bitcoin had just been going along at $5. Bit of a big rally there, big pullback, and then we get into 2013, and it was really in March when all this happened that Bitcoin did have that huge run up, okay? So, from $14 all the way up to $260, absolutely monster move. Then obviously it had a big pullback, but that's really what kick-started the rally and put Bitcoin on the map in a lot of ways back then. It was an option for people that had never existed before to protect their wealth from governments and central banks, and keep that in the back of your mind as we move through the rest of the presentation. So other news this week, we obviously saw the World Bank partner with Commonwealth Bank, Australia's largest bank. They're going to be issuing bonds on the Ethereum blockchain. Now, whether or not this is definitely going to be on the public Ethereum blockchain or a private Ethereum chain, look, I think at the end of the day, all these private chains are going to want to link up to the Ethereum public chain in some way, shape, or form in the future. So it's just good for awareness in general anyway. But the big news this week for Ethereum is that these ICOs are just selling Ethereum, en masse. And we'll look at the technicals and some of the levels that I had in mind. They've just been broken through. So this shows me that a lot of ICOs are panicking. And I know for a fact there's some ICOs in Australia that have sold a lot of Ethereum. Now, whether or not that's emotional, like traders panicking, selling at the bottom, or look, they just have to bite the bullet and say, look, we need a minimum amount of capital to keep us alive for the future. All these things are adding to the sense that we're in some sort of final capitulation of this correction as well. All these different things are painting the picture. So, look, these are people that maybe have to sell. They know it's not the best time, but maybe they have to. So, look, a lot of Ethereum, a lot of ICOs out there selling now. Whether or not that's the best time to sell, I'll let you be the judge of that. Good news. This vote here, make sure you head over there and vote if you're interested. Only 59 votes so far, but the switch to proof of work issuance. So how many new Ethereum will be minted each block rather than 5? A lot of people saying that they want to take that down to as low as one new Ethereum. So just like we saw Bitcoin, every time there's a halvening event where the new Bitcoins, they come into circulation with every block that's mined, every time that gets halved for Bitcoin, it's been very good for the price. Now, if Ethereum, the new issuance is constantly reduced from 5 to 3 now to 1, I think that would obviously be very good just on the basics of supply and demand. Other news this week, we saw a 7 nanometer mining chip being unveiled. So I've spoken about this before. Have we reached peak mining centralization in terms of all those pools, mining pools? They've got the best chips, the latest hardware. The big miners will talk about the IPO and how much money they've got. They're sort of hoarding all this equipment, pooling together and just dominating the space. Now, technology is one of the only things that has become, cheaper and cheaper over time. So gradually now we've reached this threshold where chips can't actually get a lot smaller than 7 nanometer until we get into quantum computing. If we have reached that threshold for Moore's law, maybe that starts to get cheaper and cheaper, and the average person can start to afford to buy these ASIC miners, and mining starts to decentralize out from just these places, rich people with cheap power in a few countries. It really starts to disperse, and that would be fantastic. I think we have reached peak mining centralization in a lot of ways. The more that gets decentralized, the better for everyone. So this sort of ties into this next story here about Bitmain eyeing off an $18 billion ICO. And a lot of the times when companies go public, it can be when everything's going really well around them and people get a bit blinded. But if we have reached this peak of mining centralization, this is when companies, maybe they're not worth that much. Maybe if everyone else can mine, it's going to get cheaper and cheaper and spread out, it's just something to keep in mind. I don't think I'd be participating necessarily in this IPO. Yes, they're going to always be profitable, but I just think it might be the situation where is this as good as it's going to get for Bitmain, and is mining going to spread out? So that's just something to be aware of. I'd be really interested to hear your comments in the discussion below about how this is all going to play out. Now, speaking about Bitmain, Samsung Mao did tweet this out. So interesting stats here. This is how many Bitcoin Cash, Litecoin and Dash and ETH there as well, but how many Bitmain actually have on hand. Now, again, I'd be interested to read your comments below, any other details, but some people are kind of saying here, if this is the right slide I've got up here, yeah. So Parabolic Trav replied with this. These drops from 70,000 Bitcoin on hand to 35,000, it doesn't even take into account all the additional Bitcoin that's mined throughout 2017. So he's basically saying that throughout 2017, they've sold everything they've mined. This is Bitmain. Continued to do so in 2018, and they've sold a lot of their inventory coins. So basically, that's been huge selling pressure on Bitcoin over the past months, where everything mined has been getting sold, and possibly even to acquire Bitcoin Cash. Look, I'm not sure. These guys certainly aren't fans of Bitcoin Cash, so keep that in mind. But I'd be interested to get more information about these stats, and if anyone else can verify this, that Bitmain have been selling, thousands and thousands of Bitcoins, everything that they mine, rather than a lot of miners which do sort of, hold on to their Bitcoin, save them up, maybe thinking more longer term. Some more good news for Litecoin this week. Charlie Lee came out and said, look, we're trying to integrate Litecoin payments into Telegram and SMS. I got tweeted by some Bitcoin Cash supporters saying, look, we're already trying to do this and doing it successfully through SMS. So guys, there's plenty of apps out there that already allow you to send crypto payments. I've used some myself, but it's just showing that wider and wider adoption, the more we integrate this into our everyday lives, the more crypto awareness increases. So this sort of runs into these next stories I want to talk about. So Facebook denying partnership with Stellar. A lot of rumors been going around for months about, is Facebook going to integrate payments? We saw David Marcus stepping down from the board of directors at Coinbase. So he wanted to avoid any conflict. Rumors that Facebook are launching their own coin. Look, I think it will most likely be a stable coin and not really, a speculative cryptocurrency. But I definitely think that everyone wants to integrate payments. We see how big WeChat is in China. They're always looking to integrate, more things you can do in that app, anyone that's used it. But maybe integrating blockchain and cryptocurrency for faster corporate expense refunds in this article. But I think everyone is aware that the race is on. I keep saying it. People want to integrate payments, and cryptocurrency, blockchain-based payments are a great method as we live in this global world now where it takes me 2 weeks to send money to or from my US trading account. It's just crazy, guys. So everyone wants to integrate payments into all these apps. We live on our phones. I'll talk about that a little bit more at the end. The good articles this week that, again, tend to fall on deaf ears during a bear market. South Korean government promoting blockchain and saying that blockchain's the fourth industrial revolution. So they've cracked down on blockchain and crypto at stages. I think they're going to reopen their stance in a big way. And I think China are too. The fourth industrial revolution, they don't want to be left behind. They want to be innovators at the forefront of all this. Rich Dad, Poor Dad. A lot of you will have seen documentaries and read books by Robert Kiyosaki. He's huge, guys. So another mainstream pundit that has come out and said, look, crypto is the people's money, and this is going to outlast fiat money, which he's calling a scam. So these guys that are big advocates of gold, silver, and sound money, more and more of them are turning to crypto and, sticking the knife in fiat currencies, as we've already seen this week in Turkey. Goldman Sachs announcing their plans for Coinbase custody. How many have we covered on the channel here, guys? Just from memory here, we've got Coinbase custody, Ledger saying they want to get into this space. We've seen Northern Trust, the backed news that's been last week, falling on deaf ears. 166 crypto funds to date. We've spoken a lot in my group about what coins they're going to invest in, and they're definitely going to start at the top and work their way down to some degree. The hard part is picking those smaller to mid-cap coins that the big institutions are going to invest in, and that's where you're more likely to get your 10, 20, 100x returns if you pick really wisely. The race is on. That big money is coming, guys. So a couple of surveys I did measuring sentiment. If Bitcoin falls 10% just because the ETF was delayed, and this was obviously the biggest news of the week, even though I thought we should have expected it, how much will it fall if rejected? And the crypto Twitter here voting, 45% of people saying it's going to be over 40%. That's just crazy. Even 20, 30% falls, guys. From where we are now, a lot of people are picturing a complete bloodbath if we don't get an ETF. Now, I've said a number of times that I don't think it's very likely. There's some rumors out there, some people saying close to the Van Eck ETF that they think it's a certainty to get approved in September. So the market's definitely not pricing that in. The market's seen nothing but weakness, and I think they're starting to price in now the fact that it's not going to get delayed approved anytime soon. And that's what the markets are very fearful of, even though I thought this should have been expected that it gets delayed. We know markets going to have a knee-jerk panic and sell off. These crypto markets are irrational. But, guys, this doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things. I want to talk about that a little bit more at the end as well. The big question that we're waiting to see now is these 9 ETFs that are pending to be approved or denied or just pushed back and delayed, the same as the Van Eck ETF, in the next 2 months. And that is where we're going to tie it into the technicals. What happens if all 9 of these get denied? Are markets going to panic, or is that what we're seeing this week and the previous week with, big declines? Is it all these people that speculated on the ETF that are now selling out and panicking a little bit? And markets digest and try to price in all available information. So that's what the hard part is now, deciding where we're at. The second survey I did that just showed me how bad sentiment was this week was, what's next for Bitcoin? And there was only one really bullish answer, and that only got 19% of votes. So 81% of people either think we're just going to be range bound for months or we're retesting the lows and flushing to 5,000. everyone is bearish. And I did a special video for my members yesterday, a half an hour special episode, because it really was a bloodbath on crypto Twitter and social media yesterday with, tweets coming out like this. Often that tells me that we're near the bottom, or we at least need a relief rally. And that's what I said to my members yesterday afternoon. Look, I know it's tough, but we're at least due for a relief rally. Things can't stay this bad. And then as we go through, guys, sorry, I'll get back to where we are here today. We did get that that relief rally of about $500. Let's zoom in here on the hourly chart last night. So a bit of an inverted Bart Simpson there, guys, and that's where we currently stand. So last week, Bitcoin was trading at around 69.50. I'll just zoom out and get these cycle brackets up for you as well here, guys. Sorry. Oh, no, I think they're gone. So I'll get that back on auto. The date we had for the cycle brackets continuing was the 14th, guys. So we've only got another day or two to wait now, and that's when we really expected that bounce. So we'd been having these periods of strength, and this was when we lost this level here, and we said the weakness was going to continue through to the 14th. So this is when we're looking for a bounce. We haven't really had any convincing bounces yet, but maybe that's the market this week starting to digest some good news. The flip side is that we just continue lower and all these ETFs start to get denied. But one of the scenarios that we've been looking at is this 3 bounce. So bounce, fall, bounce, fall. Is this the final bounce and the final fall? And I definitely think for altcoins, a lot of them now down 90 to 95%. Some of them maybe are going to go to zero, but some of the good coins can't continue this at least pace of decline. They can't go down 99%. There's a lot of good coins out there that already have real world use case, or those hodlers of last resort, people that just aren't going to sell at any price. So if you've invested in good projects and you've done your research and you're confident, there's just no way that some of these projects can go to zero. But particularly, let's just think about the higher end of the market cap coins. In terms of Bitcoin, this is not going anywhere. This is a store of value. This has already been used around the world. It's changing people's lives. So last week, the thing we're looking at here, sorry guys, cryptocurrency longs, was the longs versus the shorts ratio. And I said we can't go up. We're not going to have a big rally when we're anywhere near these record highs. So the lower this drops, the more chance we have of having a strong rally. And it's the same on the flip side for shorts. The higher these shorts are, the more likely it is that we actually have a bounce. So I'd really love this to continue higher and higher, and all these shorts get burned, and that is a far better recipe for a bottom to form. So keep an eye on these shorts. We did see them get burnt yesterday. That was another thing we were sort of pointing out to members, that this is overdue for a correction. It's going to cause a sharp rally. And we did get that $500 move. Sorry, guys, I did have to jump over to Bitstamp there. That's why the cycle brackets had gone, to go back and get that old historical data from 2012 to show you when Bitcoin was $5. Crazy to think about it like that. So look, guys, that's the next date there. The 31st of August, if we don't get a strong bounce here on the 14th, but it's going to be very interesting to watch these markets open. I think we're just so close. The markets feel to me like they need an excuse. They want a final capitulation. They want to panic. People want to give up. And it's really the strong hands that are still here watching videos and immersing themselves that understand that Bitcoin is not going anywhere. So next up, we've got Ethereum. This has been an absolute bloodbath, considering last week we were trading at $400. We said the next stop would be here around this 360, 370 level where we got a bounce, and I really thought that we wouldn't get below 340 unless we were in a final capitulation mode. Now, we read that story about all the ICOs being forced to sell their ETH and maybe panicking a little bit. That's been a big determining factor for Ethereum breaking these levels. The next level down from here, guys, is that 300 mark where we just spent so long, and even 295, 285. There's just so much support there as well. But I'm honestly a little bit shocked that Ethereum has performed this week compared to the altcoins. I don't think it deserves to be getting below this level. What has changed fundamentally for Ethereum? Compared to Bitcoin declining, altcoins declining. I just can't wait for the future where these individual projects get recognized and start to trade uncorrelated. Next up, Litecoin. It's finally had that weekly close below $80. Just not a lot of support. It got all the way down here to $55. Again, this really looks just like a perfect representation of that Wall Street psychology chart, where we just get these couple of bounces, then a final flush lower. Everything's telling us that we are in the final phases of that flush lower. These charts just look dead. There's just no volume. It feels like nothing ever could turn it here, guys. Litecoin's getting a bounce to the day with these cycle brackets. Maybe this is enough to give it a little bit of a kick, but I think you'd agree with me that everyone is just sapped and mentally drained, and I'm going to touch on that a little bit as well. Finally, how is Bitcoin going to perform in a crisis? Make sure you check out that video we did. A lot of people are sort of asking about that, and that's what it represents, what Bitcoin's able to do and give those people financial freedom in those countries we mentioned. Bitcoin is not a fad. The largest companies in the world, Volkswagen, are looking at this. Bitcoin, Ethereum, and IOTA. I'm just shocked that IOTA's down, 40% this week. It just shows you that people are now being really irrational in those final stages of a sell-off. And on a serious note, guys, one thing I just did mention was mental health. This can be really tough, watching your portfolio lose 90% of its value. So the worst thing you can do is become the trade. Too often people associate their trading account, their trades, with their self wealth, and let it consume them. Okay, so we all make mistakes, learn from it. The worst thing you can do is think the market owes you something. So saying I'm going to get it back on that next trade, that's when people lose money. And anytime you try to get rich quick, that's the perfect way to lose money even faster. And all you're doing is giving it to someone that's more patient than yourself. So in our crypto community, we talk of everything cryptocurrency related, from trading to investing and fundamentals, 24/7, but we're trying to stick to the plan and build wealth over the long term. So I know a lot of you have been on that waiting list. Please check your email and your junk email. We have sent out another round of invitations to everyone, and if you want to sign up, guys, the link's always below. But finally, I want to leave you with this thought. Forget everything else and remember, what does Bitcoin represent? Now, how many people have learnt the hard way, and we're lucky to some degree in Australia and the US that it hasn't happened yet in terms of hyperinflation or runaway costs of living. But think about the countries where it has, and they learnt the hard way that you can't trust central banks and government authorities. They have not been responsible when given the power to print money. Now, in Australia, we've got a banking oligopoly that's been in the news a lot lately. I'm going to talk about the Australian debt more. I'm going to talk about US debt and hyperinflation a bit this week. But don't forget that US debt goes up $160 million every hour and $4 billion a day, okay? We live in a debt-based world, a debt-based monetary system, and Bitcoin represents that chance to participate with your money in a new financial system that's decentralized and fairer for everyone. So I hope you've enjoyed that video, guys. Please hit that like button, share these videos around, subscribe if you haven't already, and thanks for tuning in, guys. Cheers.